Friends, welcome back to the Positive Voice Podcast. I am your host, Coach Chef Kim. For those of you that are new, thank you so much for listening and joining us. And for those of you who've been here before, welcome back, friend. So, this particular podcast episode is going to be a little different from others, and I'm going to tell you why. For the last couple of weeks, my life has gone through some really, really major changes, none in a bad way. All actually leading to things that are really, really positive, but it required me to kind of stop and sit back and really think about what is next. So, for the last 3 years, right, in the midst of this pandemic that we just got an email that stated it will officially be declared over in May of 2023. Okay, so that means that for the last 3 years and almost 2 months, we as a world, as a society, as humans, have been inside of a pandemic. We have been, I don't even want to say trapped, but we've been surviving things that were beyond our control, things that had nothing to do with us. We have all experienced the outrageous inflation of things. We have experienced that, your money is not going as far as it used to. We've all had the collective shared experience of injustices and watching riots and watching people lose their lives on the internet. And we've all collectively shared a rapid change in the world. What we have not all shared is a shift into something different, right? I can remember at the top of the pandemic being like super annoyed by the word unprecedented. Like, please stop saying that. Yes, I get it. None of us in this lifetime have seen this, but that word felt like it was really, really overused. Unprecedented became super, it was like the catchphrase, right? That's like, these are unprecedented times. That was annoying. But then I realized that there was a word that people kept using that equally annoyed me, and it was the word overwhelm. Overwhelm has become the new normal in how you describe how you are responding to stress. All right, so track with me, because this is something that I realized was getting inside of my spirit and annoying me. And I was like, you're not going to be an effective coach if every time somebody says they feel overwhelmed, you get annoyed. And so I was doing the work to figure out, why was I triggered by the word overwhelmed? 2 reasons. Number one, it's overused. Number two, you're incorrectly naming what you're feeling. Some people really may feel overwhelmed. Okay. That may be the only word you can come up with to describe the amount of stress that you are carrying in your life. You feel stressed out, right? So we used to say I'm stressed out, and then we say we're overwhelmed. All right. So incorrectly naming what you're feeling is where I had the issue. So there are some people that I have come across and I have coached that really are overwhelmed. The amount of stress that they have in their life is really, really big. It's really, really heavy. And they don't have anyone to help them carry it. They are overwhelmed with their lives. Okay. But then there are people who are facing a little bit of stress. And it might not even be a stress. We can say they're just inconvenienced by life right now. And they too are using the word overwhelmed. This is where I have the problem. Okay. There's no reason, if you have been inconvenienced by life versus overwhelmed by life, it's difficult for me as a coach to effectively walk you through it when you make something bigger than it actually is. Okay. Now, this is not a one size fits all situation. I can only give it to you from the lens of a life coach. Here is how I look at it. For people who are having a bad moment in life, right? You had a bad 5 minutes within your whole 24 hours of the day. You had a bad moment. You didn't have a bad day. There are people who are experiencing life in a way where negative things continuously happen to them. They're having a bad day, right? Like if you do, it's one of those days where nothing goes right, as opposed to your morning started off really crappy, but it got better throughout the day. You didn't have a bad day. You had a bad moment, not a bad day. And so I have reached a point of understanding critical thinking when it comes to how we use our words and how we say what we're feeling. Okay. Why am I telling you this? Why am I giving you like this differences, this versus this not this? Why do I think it matters that we name what we're feeling appropriately? I'm glad you asked me. I'm going to tell you. So in one of my most viral posts, well, one or recently viral posts on Newsbreak, I wrote about your brain can't tell the difference between physical pain and emotional pain. Okay. So if you are physically injured, the way that your body responds, it responds the same way when you are emotionally injured. Okay. So when people say, I can feel my heart breaking, yeah, sweetie, you can. You can literally physically feel your heart breaking. It feels that way. It feels like somebody's like ripping out your heart. Okay. Your brain doesn't know the difference between the physical pain or the emotional pain. And I've learned since that post went out that there are people who the wiring in their brain thinks everything, like their brain is always in this state that everything is to the extreme. Now, that's a small amount of the population, but I love that the fact that there's dialogue around this so that I can become more educated on it. And so I began this research and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that like there are conditions where people, it literally is the worst day every day because that's the way their brain is wired. Okay. Very, very small amount of the population experiences this. There are other people who are just dramatic. We're going to call it what it is. If you are perpetually in the state of being the victim, you doing it to yourself. Okay. There are some people who are experiencing hardships. There are other people causing themselves to do that. What do I mean? Here we go. So a friend of mine was talking to me and she was like, I did this, but I didn't do this because I haven't decided if I want to do that. And my response back to her was, don't make a decision to break your own heart. Now, I said what I said and I meant it. Follow me. How many times have you played out something in your mind, right? Like if I say this or if I do this when I get home, the other person is going to respond by doing this, and this, right? Like you play out the whole situation in your head. And by the time it's over, you've become so emotionally invested in the thing you created in your mind that now you have worked yourself into a tizzy. You already are on high alert. Your body has already gone into fight or flight mode. Like you broke your own heart in your head. You were going through the emotions inside of your own mind that it began to manifest inside of your body, where you are now feeling the stress responses in your body because you broke your own heart just by thinking about something. So by the time the other person enters the situation, you're already in stress mode. You're already in response mode. And they're like, what's wrong with you? Like, I just walked in the door. What's your problem? You broke your own heart. They didn't do that. The other person didn't do that to you. You did it to yourself. And I don't think we understand the amount of credit we're not giving our brains. Okay. So if you know me personally, or if you have been around me, been in my coaching groups, been a part of other things that I've taught at, people are always like, choose a new thought. And I had to stop saying choose a new thought. I used to say it all the time. On my last podcast, on the Visionary Catalyst podcast, it's still up. I don't add any new content, but it is still available. If you listen to it, you will hear me say choose a new thought all the time. And I'm going to tell you why I stopped saying it. I stopped saying it because I realized people didn't have the tools to choose a new thought. And so for the last couple of months, maybe for about 6 months, I've been trying to understand people, humans. Why can't you just choose a new thought? I can. Right? Like, I know when I'm spiraling and I'm like, hey, girl, get your life together. I know how to stop myself and choose a new thought, but I'm also incredibly educated. And I have tools in my toolbox that allow me to very quickly go grab a tool and then use it. A lot of times we pay for tools, classes, trainings, coaching, one-on-one coaching, group coaching. We join Facebook groups. We do all these things. We join masterminds. We do all of these things to get the tools. But then you never actually do the lessons. So you never learn how to do the tool. You never learn how to use it. So if you don't know how to use the tool that's in your toolbox, you just have a heavy ass toolbox, but you don't have anything that's actually going to help you. There's a difference between knowing when you need to use a hammer and when you need to use a screwdriver. If you go purchase a toolbox from a department store or from like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, they're going to come with the tools already in them. But if you don't know when to use the tool to do what job, you're going to be ineffective. So having a toolbox does not help you when you don't know how to use the tools inside of the box. I have a lot of tools in my box and I know how to use them, which is why I know how to stop myself from spiraling out of control all the time. A lot of people don't know how to do that. You're a collector, you're a hoarder, you're a collector of tools, but you've never taken the time to actually learn how to use it and apply it to your life, right? So if you don't know how to use the tools in your toolbox, then you're being ineffective when it comes to doing things. These are people who feel overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed because everybody in your life is dumping all their crap in your lap and you don't have boundaries to tell people, I don't want this. You're overwhelmed because you keep taking classes and you keep jumping from coach to coach to coach, group to group to group to group, and you're never applying any of the things that people are teaching you. You're looking for someone to rescue you. Beloved, you cannot carry the toolbox and also wait for the prince to come and get you. That's not how this works. You're not a damsel in distress when you have a toolbox full of tools. You have to understand who you are as a person. And so, as I have been going through studying people and studying the brain and understanding neuroscience and understanding neurobiology and understanding how our words have actions and understanding how we can break our own heart just by our thoughts, well, choose a new freaking thought. If you choose a new thought, then you won't break your heart. If you have the ability to understand that your thoughts create your future reality. If we took the time to really, really understand that, then you would understand why it's important for you to stop jumping from program to program, coach to coach, group to group, thinking that somebody is going to say something different. Baby, you just don't like that people are telling you to do the work. You have to do the work yourself. Nobody else can do it for you. I don't care if you see a coach, if you see a therapist, if you go see a doctor. We're all going to give you tools to put in your toolbox, but you have to do the work. Even if I tell you what to do, and I'm going to put this in terms, for those of you who are new to me, you don't know this, I am a chef. I am a Le Cordon Bleu trained pastry chef. I no longer do that for a living, but I have the credentials, okay? So as a chef, when I was teaching people, I went to culinary school. I learned how to use all of the tools that were inside of my knife kit on day one. Well, when we went for orientation, we picked up our knife kits and we picked up our uniforms. And then we also got our textbooks. And for a year, we learned how to use all of these different knives. You don't go to culinary school and get one knife. You have multiple knives. They all work for something different. As pastry students, we had other things inside of our toolkits that we needed to know how to use to be an effective pastry chef, okay? So the culinary chefs versus the pastry chefs, we had two different tool sets. That's important. If I were given the culinary chef toolkit as a pastry chef, I would have been very unsuccessful as a pastry chef, and vice versa. If the culinary chef was given the pastry chef equipment and they were given, apple peelers and corers and given rubber spatulas and given paring knives to cut fruit, that would not help them when they needed to be cooking meat. What were they going to do with that? Right? Like, our toolkits were different because we were doing different things. Yes, the culinary chef has a set, the pastry chef has a set. We are all working in a kitchen. We're all in the same environment, right? But not really. You work in a hot kitchen. I don't. If I were in a hot kitchen while working with chocolate, my chocolate is never going to sit. I need to be somewhere cool. My environment matters. If I am trying to temper chocolate, I need cold. But if it's too cold, my chocolate's going to set too fast. If my chocolate sets too fast, then once I put it on this marble slab, it's not going to work. Understanding that the tools that you need for a particular project of your life may vary from the person who is next to you is important. Understanding that you need to have multiple tools in your toolbox so that you can pull them out when the time is right, also very important. You cannot use a hammer to fix everything. Hammers put nails in walls. If the nail is not in the wall properly and I need to take it back out, using that hammer might not help me. I might need to use a different tool, particularly if you go too far and you can't flip that hammer around to pull it back out of the wall. I'm gonna have to use another tool that is going to assist me in being able to use the hammer again. Understanding that in order for your brain to go back and pull on the resources that you have learned, the different methods you have learned to cope with life, the different things, the person you had to evolve into in order to survive the last 3 years. As your brain is sifting through all of these things, if you don't properly name what you're experiencing, your brain may give you the wrong tool. Okay. So if instead of saying, "Ooh, I'm having a really bad moment right now, I'm going to go do a 5-minute body scan. I'm going to pull up Coach Chef Kim's Visionary Catalyst Meditations, and I'm going to do a 3 to 5 minute body scan so that I can feel what's going on in my body. I'm going to do a 3 to 5 minute grounding exercise so that I can be okay. You know what? I'm going to go hop in the shower so that I can reset my body. And we can try this again. You know what? Maybe I'm going to go take a nap, or maybe I'm going to go get a drink of water, or maybe I'm going to go outside and go for a walk, right? You just need a little bit of something to help you keep going. versus the person who is absolutely having a meltdown and they are in the middle of an amygdala hijack and you cannot stop. You have spiraled so far out of control, you don't know what to do. There's a difference between those two people. But if you tell your brain that you are overwhelmed and it's really just, I just need to go for a walk. Like you haven't checked in with yourself, but you just immediately, people say, how are you? Oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. Are you? Most people who are overwhelmed aren't saying it, right? So your words matter. Understanding what words mean matter. When people ask me, I get really, really quiet whenever I start to feel stress in my body. So the same thing that people will say that when they say they feel overwhelmed, I learned a long time ago not to say I feel overwhelmed. Overwhelm for me means I cannot control what's happening to the external stimuli in my life. That is stress. Okay. So I say when I feel stress in my body, because some stress you don't feel. Some things you're just like, I can't control this. Yeah, it's a little stressful, whatever, but it's going to be fine. Other times, stress literally manifests in the body. And so once I learned how to name it, for me, it manifests in my shoulders. So I be like, ooh, I'm feeling stress in my body. I feel tension in my body. My shoulders feel really, really tight. My back is beginning to hurt, right? Like when you feel this quote unquote overwhelming feeling, where do you feel it? Literally, where do you feel this in your body? Once I learned this and I can now go, ooh, okay, I'm carrying more than I need to right now. The weight of whatever this is, my body is letting me know it's too much for us and we need to take a moment. We need to take a breath. I had to learn that. And have I had 3 years to learn it? Yeah, I have. Actually, I've only had 2 years to learn it. I didn't start this practice until 2 years ago. The way that I knew how to figure this out is through mindfulness. Mindfulness is literally about the here and now. It's about the present moment. It's not about what happened. It's not about what's coming. It's about right now. It's about slowing down to recognize what's happening right now. It's very much so here and now. That's what mindfulness is. Okay. So when we have a mindfulness moment, you can have them at any time. If you're living in the present and you are monitoring yourself, you are monitoring how you feel, right? No storm ever just like shows up. It gets a little dark before, it starts storming. You can hear the thunder miles away before it gets to you, right? People say the storm is coming, right? It didn't just, oh, we're driving along and there was no sign that it was going to change. You can see it ahead. I've been driving, the sun was shining, and I could see the rain ahead of me, right? You can see it coming. You need to be able to recognize that in your body. That's mindfulness. You paying attention to yourself. You paying attention to external stimuli. You can do this with your kids. If you have kids, they are really easy to do this with. We call it triggers. What triggered this response? What triggered that child to fall out? What happened? They asked for something. You said no. You knew they were going to fall out on the floor, right? You knew it was coming. As an adult, as people who are self-aware, we have the opportunity and the power to be able to do that for ourselves. So if I start to feel discomfort in my shoulders and in my body, it looks like you start moving your shoulders a little bit. You're kind of like, ooh, okay, all right, this is a little tight here. Let me get up and take a walk. Let me get up and stretch. Let me get up and, go drink some water, please. Let me unclench my jaws. Let me sit back. Let me relax my body. When you are aware of these things, you can realize, okay, it's time for me to check in on myself. What's going on right now? What's happening? This is how we discover what the stress is before we get to the point of feeling overwhelmed, as though we don't know what to do with ourselves, before we hit the amygdala hijack trigger, before we hit this whole uh fight, flight, or flee response, before our body goes there, right? If you check in with yourself often, I don't even want to say periodically, often, particularly if you're new to the practice, the more you check in with yourself, the more you're like, how do I feel? What's going on with me right now? The easier it will be for you. The easier it will be for you to be able to be like, okay, let me grab this tool out of my toolbox and make this thing happen, right? It helps you help your brain know how to respond. But you have to be mindful of what's happening to you. All right, let's see if I can break this down a little further. Okay, here's an easy one. I no longer go to places or go around people who make me feel less than. What do I mean by that? All right, so track with me and let me know if you've ever experienced this. You ever know you got to go somewhere, and if the first response you have is who's going to be there, don't go. If the second response you have is when, they're like, I don't know, maybe it's a family function, or maybe it's a friend who has multiple friend groups and you don't really get along with everybody in the other friend groups that your friend belongs to, but they want you to come to an event, and you start feeling apprehension. You're like, you butterflies in your stomach. Like you start to feel discomfort in your body at the thought of having to go somewhere and being around certain people. That's your body telling you not to go. I don't do that anymore. Right? Like there used to be things that I had to go to, and I would feel that all the way there, the entire ride going, I feel like I'm going to throw up and I don't want to go. And what happens? I get there. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's the worst thing I could have done with my day. The people who were there, who I knew were going to act a complete monkey, acted a complete monkey. I left the experience feeling like I was less than. I left the experience feeling as though people were like, why are you here? Oh, you're here as an obligation. You didn't have to come. There were people who were constantly telling me I did not matter when I showed up at these events. So guess what? Don't freaking go. Don't go. Like for real. Even when it's with your family of origin, don't go. Why would you continue to put yourself in situations that don't mean you any good? Don't go. And so as you're moving through life and as you're making decisions and you are trying to improve your mental health and you're trying to drink your water and you're trying to mind your business and you're trying to do all of these things that you see these gurus on the internet telling you to do, let me tell you something. The fact that you're trying to do them is your first problem. Don't try, just do it. Choosing a new thought simply means you recognize that your brain is spiraling. You recognize that your brain is very quickly going through the file cabinet of memories and reminding you that you are not worthy. Your brain is only going to give you evidence of what you think. So if you keep telling yourself that you are not worthy and you don't matter and you are a failure and your mama was right and this, that, and the third, your brain is going to go find evidence of that. Guess what? If you say, I am worthy, I am whole and complete, I have clarity on this situation, I am going to sit over here and I am going to breathe deeply and I'm going to allow the universe to speak to me. If you give yourself positive affirmations and not that toxic shit, don't be out here, oh, the sky is blue, the sun is shining. We're not doing that here. You're speaking positive affirmations over yourself. What does that mean? It means that you're doing an I am affirmation. I am worthy. I am wealthy. I am healthy. I am that bitch. Shout out to Baby Tate. Listen, if you can't do it for yourself, go on Spotify and pull up some affirmations. Let other people tell you that you're worthy. Let other people listen to Whitney Houston. I'm every woman, baby. Listen, do the things you need to do in order to pump yourself up because it's nobody else's job. It's just not. I know y'all listen to me to be the positive voice inside of your head, and I wholeheartedly appreciate that. So many people have told me that whenever they're going through a difficult time, they're like, oh my God, I heard you in my head. You're the reason I was able to get through this because I heard your voice. Great. That's why we renamed the podcast the Positive Voice Podcast. I love being able to replace your negative thoughts with mine. I love that. It took me years to get to this point where my own voice could be the positive voice in my head. I don't mind being the positive voice for other people. I love it. I do. But here's the tea. You can hear me as a positive voice in your head, but you can also hear yourself. You also need to learn how to name the voices in your head. That's going to be a completely different podcast because, baby, we do not have time for that today. Maybe that'll be the next one. But you need to be able to name it. So the same way that we are naming what we actually feel, are you overwhelmed or are you a little stressed? If you're a little stressed, what can you do to relieve it before we get too overwhelmed? When people tell me that they're overwhelmed and they physically look disheveled and they look like they're overwhelmed, you've been ignoring yourself to the point that your body was like, bitch, screw you. Yeah, you are overwhelmed right now. You are absolutely right. You are. There are people who want to have sessions with me, and I am like, I am not a therapist. I cannot help you because by the time you hit this overwhelm, I can't walk you back out of it. There's not enough tools in my toolbox to properly help you facilitate what you're experiencing when you reach that point. However, if you're here learning, how do you discover this? How do I feel it in my body? How do I get out of my head and inside of my body and ground myself? That's what that means. When you're grounding, you're coming out of your head and into your body. How do you ground yourself long enough to figure out what you're feeling so that you can name it effectively? These things are important, right? So, yes, the positive voice. I'm going to be here to give you motivation and give you inspiration. But one of the things that I realized I needed to do was to have a homegirl talk with you to say, listen, some of y'all, not all of you, some of y'all need to understand you breaking your own heart. You need to understand that it's not external forces doing stuff to you. You're doing it to yourself because you inside of your head. I need you to come out of your head into your body, and I need you to start feeling things. I need you to be mindful of what we're feeling. Now, I already know what's coming. Well, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to be mindful? I'm glad you asked. So let me tell you about something I've been working on, which is what led me to this podcast, which is why we're now going to discuss it. So by the end of May, I am going to launch a very low ticket membership. And I mean low ticket. Okay. It's going to be less than the cost of a meal at a restaurant. And there's a reason for this. As many of you all know, I was in a program that was kind of like a master's to doctoral track, and that particular school is closing. And so I have jumped ship and I am starting a doctoral program next week. Orientation is this week. The program starts next week. And so I've had a couple of weeks off, which is why I said at the top of this podcast episode, the last couple of weeks have been a little crazy. So now this is no longer me studying on coaching and things of the sort. We have moved into a doctoral program on mind body medicine. And what that means is I will be studying and learning about this process of how do the mind and body work together? How do you heal your body? Almost into think a new thought, but with more tools, right? So I'm not going to go into all of the fun things I'll be doing right now. I'll explain that to y'all later. But just know that as I grow, the podcast grows. The more I know, the more you know, okay? But to start us off, we're going to start at the bare minimum. I'm going to go back 2 years because I've really been thinking about this. Like, how do I help people effectively? And I had to think about where I was 2 years ago. I started my mindfulness journey in April of 2021, maybe March of 2021, because I was getting divorced in April of 2021. And so that's when it started. And as I was going through that particular season of my life, the people who were in my life began to change. Some people knew I was getting divorced. Most people did not. They didn't find that out till a couple of months later when I changed my name on Facebook. Neither here nor there. I went through a mindfulness journey, and it helped me get to this point. When it was first presented to me, I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't understand. And so I was given, like, a list of feelings. I was given a feelings wheel. I was given a wheel of feelings, and I needed to be able to name my feelings. We only use like 5, and there's way more than 5 feelings. Who knew? So I had to learn how to properly name my feelings. And so I would have to look, whenever I was in a therapy session, she would be like, look at the feelings wheel. Tell me, what do you actually feel? Because it may not be overwhelmed. It may be fear. It may not be overwhelmed. It just may be you haven't made enough money. If your bank account looks horrible, baby, that's going to stress you out, right? If your bank account looks horrible, that's going to stress you out. If you are stressed out, your energy is going to be very, very low, which means you're not operating in a higher vibration that is going to allow you to be receptive of abundance, right? So I'm over here in this abundance, and I'm like, but the people I'm talking to are not. So how did I get here? I get asked that question a lot. How do you stay so positive? How do you keep doing the things that you're doing? Okay, let's go backwards and let's teach people how we do this. And then I was like, but even when these people who are listening to me right now learn the steps, they learn how to incorporate a mindfulness journey into their lives. They learn how to go from 0 to abundant. What do I do when another person enters my life and they're like, how do you do this? I can't keep doing the cycle over and over, right? So then I was like, oh, this is what the membership needs to be. It's something that will continue to live regardless to what level I go through or what level I go to. There's always going to be a path. Okay. So what I am working on is mindfulness 101, essentially. No, it's not going to be called that, but that's what this is. It's how do you even start the mindfulness journey? Okay. This is clearing out the clutter of your life. This will give you the tools and the resources to, number one, know yourself. Because until you face yourself in the mirror and we know who you really are, I can't help you. You have to face. You have to face who you are in order for us to be able to work together. And if you don't want to commit to doing that level of work, I definitely can't work with you. So this membership will allow people the opportunity to do some personality tests and learn about yourself. I understand if you don't believe in astrology and all those sorts of things, cool, no problem. But I believe in science. So if I give you a personality test, it's backed in science. It's not fluff. I need you to do it so that you can learn a thing or two about yourself. You need to know how you respond to stress. You need to know what your triggers are. So we need to know this in order to help you. That's number one. So inside of the membership, you will learn that. The other thing is, people are like, you're so inspirational, you're so motivational. I just need to talk to you to get a little hit. You need dopamine hits. I'm gonna teach you how to do it for yourself. It's one thing for you to listen to me and get excited. It's another thing for you to listen to, Tabitha Brown or Brene Brown or Mel Robbins or Oprah Winfrey or Michelle Obama, right? You can listen to any of those people and get a little dopamine hit, a little bit of inspiration that makes you feel good. You got some goosebumps, but you're not going to change your life. Okay. Inside of this membership, you're going to get the inspiration. You're going to get the dopamine hit. But you're also going to have homework that makes you do the action. It's like if you're a Christian, or it doesn't really matter if you're a Christian or not. If you go to church or you go to a place of worship and you listen to someone give you this really inspirational message, and then you write all these notes down while you're there, and you write in the margins of your Bible or your journal or your notebook, but you never apply it to your life, what are you doing? How is this effective and how is this working? It's not. You have to do the work. So inside of this, there will be guided meditations. There will be guided body scans. You will hear my voice walking you through how to apply all these things to your life. How do you do this? How do you recognize an amygdala hijack from you need a nap? How do you learn how to eat mindfully? Mindfulness is a full body experience. It's holistic wellness. It's holistic wellness. It's an opportunity for you to engage with yourself on a level you probably never have. That is what's going to be inside of this membership. And that's something I will be working on, as it has just become very, very apparent to me, particularly in the last couple of days, that this is where I need to go with what I'm doing. I can give you all of these, podcast episodes and workbooks and books and classes and things of the sort that people ask me for all the time, all the time. And it do nothing for you. It does nothing for you. How do you understand that mindfulness isn't about sitting on the floor Indian style and meditating? That's a part of it. Meditation is a part of a mindfulness practice, but that's not mindfulness. There's mindful eating. I'm going to teach you how to do that. Is there a cookbook coming? Of course, I'm a chef. Stop it. Yes, there's a mindful eating book coming. If you are neurodivergent, and because this is a thing, if you are neurodivergent and your brain, as beautiful as it is, baby, if you have ADHD, that is not a curse, that's a blessing. Listen to me. If you are going through and your brain is all over the place and you have so many ideas and you want to do so many things, mindfulness is going to help you. Do I have specific things, particularly for neurodivergent people? I do, because I have 2 neurodivergent children. Yes. I'm creating a neurodivergent cookbook. Here's how you cook and you don't know how to stay on task. Here's how you do this without burning down your kitchen. Yep. It will be the same thing inside of any workbook or book that is coming through that I'm about to create, and even with the classes, right? So inside of this membership, you will have mindful eating, you will have mindfulness walks. There will be podcasts, particularly for walking. How do you do all of these different things in order to begin to pay attention to your life, to ground yourself, and to like fully understand who you are as a person? All of those things are going to be inside of the membership. Has membership launched? No, it has not. It will launch before the end of May. If you want to know about that, then you can visit thepositivevoicepodcast.com and sign up for the newsletter, or you can join our free Facebook group, which will be linked down in the show notes below. If you're already in the Facebook group, the name of it changed over the weekend based on this new direction that we are going. So just make sure you look for that. Make sure you look for those changes. Look down in the show notes so that you can see all of those things. So if you finish this podcast and you listen all the way through, you know that there's a whole lot of things coming. And now is the time for you to be able to understand what alignment in your life means. So I'm going to leave you guys with this. My word for the year was A-N-D. That was my word for the year. And the reason for that is because it stands for something: align with purpose, navigate with ease, dream with intention. That's exactly what we're going to do inside of this membership. So the next time you say you feel overwhelmed, I want you to stop, take a breath, and then I want you to name what you're feeling. If you truly are overwhelmed, you won't be able to stop and take a breath. But if you can stop and take a breath and think about it, you're not overwhelmed. I want you to name it properly. And then use the tools that are in your toolbox that are going to help you get through this moment. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Positive Voice Podcast. I am your host, Coach Chef Kim. And until next time, I'll see you later.